It's a very warm welcome to the Humanity podcast show today to Mr. Will Parker. Will, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me, and to all your listeners.
You're welcome, and I just want to shout out to you before we get going really into the meat of the show today is there are very few occasions where a guest goes to so much trouble and effort and professionalism to be on my show, so thank you very much for all the effort that you've put into appearing on the show today.
You're more than welcome. I was very excited. To have somebody interested in what I'm doing is really, really exciting. So I like to make the extra effort to make things happen.
Brilliant. Well, as they say, everyone has a story, and it's my job as a podcaster to try and bring as many of those stories to life as I possibly can. So we're all thrilled to be listening to yours today. Now, before we go on, whereabouts in the world are you chatting to us from?
I'm in Broome, Western Australia.
Broome, Western Australia. Now, a lot of people who are listening, we're going to 110 countries around the world today, Will, so there's a lot of people out there that have got no idea at all where Broome, Western Australia is. So can you give us a little bit of a geographical lesson?
We're pretty remote in Australia. We're right up the northwest corner of the country.
Right.
So people have got a bit of an idea where Perth is.
Yep.
And then people have got a little bit of an idea where Darwin is.
Yep.
We are 1,800 kilometres west of Darwin, or 2,800 kilometres, or give or take, north of Perth.
Wow, that's 3/4 of the way across America.
So, so we're sitting up on a little bay called Roebuck Bay.
Yep.
So we're on a peninsula. So on the eastern side of our peninsula, we have Roebuck Bay, and on the western side of the peninsula, we have Cable Beach and the Indian Ocean.
Well, there you go. Cable Beach, I think, has the best sunsets in the world. Is that right?
They're pretty hard to beat. So, you go to a lot of places, and you might get lucky to get a good one. Cable Beach, it's generally pretty expected that you'll get a good one, so you don't get many duds. So there's nothing between where you're standing on the sand and the horizon, and then there's nothing from the horizon to Africa.
Wow, extraordinary, isn't it? You know, some people just can't fathom the sense of distance in Australia, and I've been here for a few years, and it still bewilders me sometimes how far it is to everywhere. Have you even had COVID-19 up there? Do you know what it is?
Yes, no, we did. The greater region that I live in is called the Kimberley.
Right.
And the Kimberley is it's a sensitive biosecurity area due to the fact that we have so many remote Aboriginal communities up here. And we're right up the very top of Western Australia, but we're probably closer to the Northern Territory in a lot of respects than we are to the rest of Western Australia. And we had COVID-19 in quite a few places in the Kimberley. We had it in Halls Creek, Broome, Derby, and but it came and it went pretty quick. We've always been vigilant and on guard about it, but it wasn't as bad as what it could have been, and that was maybe through part good luck and part good management.
Well, good to hear that. Good to hear. We don't want anybody getting too affected by that nasty thing that stopped a lot of us from travelling. So before we go on, dedicate the show to someone special in your life. I always offer this up for my guests to dedicate their podcast episode to someone special. Who's your lucky person you're going to dedicate it to? Oh,
goodness me. It'd have to be the family. My wife and 2 kids.
Yep.
So I'm a stay-at-home dad. That's what I do. In the past, I was a photographer.
Okay.
And ever since my wife gave birth to the kids, I caught them, and I've been responsible for them ever since.
Fantastic.
If I want to go anywhere or do anything, I've had to take them with me. I've had to adapt and take them with me. So they've been with me on all of my travels.
Yeah, brilliant.
So my kids have been camping in pretty remote areas from almost birth.
Yep.
So they're well attuned to roaming around and travelling, and I travelled a lot before I had kids, but when you have kids, it throws a different perspective on things. And so it's been really exciting to be able to somewhat go over a lot of old ground that I've travelled myself pre-kids, and show the kids, but it's completely different. What you look at as a single person and what you look at when you got two kids in tow is completely different.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the kids and the wife, I think.
Okay, brilliant. Well, that's a lovely dedication, and you can sit down all together afterwards and have a listen and watch the show together. Yeah, bit of popcorn out there and a few cold ones up in Broome.
They're really excited. They I've kicked them out at the moment. They've gone to the beach, but they're really excited to see what it's all about.
Yeah.
So.
Fantastic.
Who I'm talking to and what I'm talking about.
You put the pressure on me. I have to do a good job today to make sure I live up to expectation.
I'm sure you'll be fine, Mark. You've interviewed lots of people and probably crazier than me. So.
There we go. Well, today we're going to talk predominantly about an amazing road trip you've done, and we're going to talk about 70,000 miles of driving across the United States of America. And that's something that a lot of my listeners will be really interested in, because once these travel bans finish, there's a lot of people that have already bought tickets heading to the United States. And to see that fantastic country, it's one of my favourites. It's an unsung hero when it comes to scenery and beauty that a lot of people underestimate, I think, in the world of travel. I think that's got such amazing contrast, and we're going to see and hear about it through your eyes and ears today. So first of all, you decided to do a road trip across America. How did that come about?
Well, it's funny. It's a funny story. I've been around Australia 3 times.
Right. Okay.
And I've roamed around, and if you overlay a map of Australia over America, it's almost the same size.
Mm-hmm.
So California and Maine stick out the edges, and Australia goes into Canada a bit and sticks down near Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
But by and large, it's almost the same landmass.
Mm-hmm.
And having been around Australia so many times, I didn't get bored with it, but I was looking for a bigger challenge. I was looking for bigger horizons, and it was America. And growing up, I guess you're influenced a lot by what happens in America. And anyway, America it was. So, but the problem was, I could have went for 4 weeks, or I could have went for a couple of weeks. But see, living in the Kimberley where I live, my nearest town to the south is 600 kilometres.
Right.
And my nearest town to the north is 230 kilometres. And they're only small places. They're not like travelling to big places. And I was always afraid that if I went to America for a short amount of time, I would be too tempted just to go, because to travel 1,000 kilometres in a day is not here nor there to me.
Right.
And I would be sitting in Florida and I would look at a map and say to myself, well, the Grand Canyon's only 1,000 kilometres away. We could be there in a day. But the wife said, no, it doesn't work like that. It's not going to happen. It's if we go for 2 weeks, we're only going to be limited to what we could see. And I thought, well, that's no good. I won't be able to live with that. I'll be going out of my brain knowing that there's all these things so close and I can't get to them.
Yeah.
So a year it was. So we sold everything we had except the house.
Right.
And we rented the house out, but sold the whole lot, everything.
Yep.
And we bought an RV and off we went. So, and for about 1 month we had a plan. But after that, the trip took over. And we weren't on the trip anymore. The trip was taking us.
Yeah.
And so we had certain places we really wanted to have a look at, but by and large we weren't governed in any way by a map or a time frame or places that we wanted to go.
Yep. Yep.
And so there was so many times we got to a fork in the road and we say, right, left or right? And, what we want to see is right, but I wonder what's left.
Yeah.
And so we often just followed our noses, and it was all the bigger things that we wanted to see, like New York and San Francisco and the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, places like that, they were all brilliant. They were all fantastic. You know, childhood dreams fulfilled. It was all the little places, and so all the places you didn't know were there, or you weren't expecting to see, or you passed through en route to somewhere else. And some days we planned to travel 300 kilometres, and we only made it like 30 kilometres down the road before we stopped and got caught up in looking at something.
Yeah.
And so it was really good. The diversity and the overall, just the stuff to see is incredible.
Yeah.
And it's like America's like 50 little countries that make up a big country. And there are places that you go and you experience things, and it's localized to that area.
Yep.
So you might enjoy something in Texas and you think to yourself, well, you've got to gorge yourself on that food or that beer or that experience, because you can't get it when you cross over into Arizona
somewhere
or go
else. Yeah, exactly. Let's back up for the sake of the listeners and viewers who are going to jump on your coattails here and go and do this. So when you talk about buying an RV, now that can be a horrendous proposal for anybody at the best of times, because someone outside of the United States probably doesn't understand the RV lingo when it comes to all the different classes of RVs that you have. And so how did you navigate your way through that minefield on actually getting the right type of RV for you and your family?
Okay, well, we were lucky in the sense that we had some friends who had previously done the trip. And they were somewhat our inspiration for doing the trip. And they gave us a lot of pointers on how to get our head around what we were looking for. And so we did a lot of research on different Facebook sites. We did a lot of research on actual company websites that hire out RVs.
Right.
And to get your head around the different classes of RV. And so different classes, class A, B, C, all fit or sleep different amounts of people. And so the first thing you've got to get your head around is how many of you there are, and then how long you're going to go for, and then what you're going to do in the RV. So for us, we had to sleep 4 people, but for the length of time that we were going, it was our house, it was our home. So we were not only sleeping in it, we were schooling the kids as well as we were travelling around. We were, a lot of downtime was spent in or around the RV. If the weather was bad, you were generally in it.
Yep.
And so you have to get your head around what the different RVs offer. And some RVs have one permanent bed, and the other beds fold down from tables or couches. And do you want that? Do you want to be putting beds up and down at the beginning and the end of each day and stuff like that? So in the end of all our research, we had a pretty fair idea of what we wanted. And anyway, I was lucky that I had a sister-in-law over in America, and she was able to check a few out for me. And that made it really it made it easier because you had somebody on the ground that would go and look at stuff for you. Whereas if we didn't have her there, we would have had to shortlist what we wanted and then spend that first bit of our trip actually looking at that shortlist to pick out which we thought would have been the best for us.
I'm going to get bombarded with people wanting to know your sister-in-law's phone number and email address because they're going to want somebody on the ground to help them out. So when you started planning the trip, how long was it between, okay, light bulb idea, we want to go and do this road trip across America, until you'd actually got the RV and you were sitting in San Francisco ready to go? What was the time frame there?
5 years.
5 years. Okay.
5 years it took us.
Wow.
So we saved up all our leave. We didn't have a holiday for 5 years. We saved it all up, and during that time we had long service leave and this, that, and the rest, and we saved it all up. And then we had some time without pay thrown in on that, and we didn't go on a holiday in that time. We saved up all our money. We were really frugal. All the things that you kind of do on a daily basis in life, maybe buy lunch, buy dinner, buy coffee, have a few beers, this, that, and the rest. We didn't upgrade phones. We didn't upgrade vehicles. We just, for 5 years, we just knuckled down and saved everything.
Fantastic.
And it's incredible what you can do when you actually put your mind to it.
Yeah.
And we got to the end of it, and it was just before we were about to leave, and we looked at our bank balance and we went, wow, we actually achieved that. And you would never have thought it possible.
Yeah.
But you can do it. It is possible if you are steadfast in what you want to do. So if you have this desire to go and travel around America for a year, and you're prepared to sacrifice in the lead up to it, and you're prepared to, well, in our case, we sold everything. As I said, all we had was the house, and we rented that out.
Yeah.
And we went, and we had a pocket full of money, and we had a year.
Yeah.
And we had a fat time.
So let's talk about the next crossroads, was when you went to that bank account and took the money out and then lost 30% of it in the exchange rate. How did that feel?
The exchange rate killed us. It absolutely killed us last year. I look at it this year and I think to myself, my goodness, I would have done for that. You know, it was last year, it was like 55, 60 cents.
Yeah.
And it was almost like for every American dollar we got, we had to part with $1.50 Australian.
Right.
And it made it tough at times. You had to really prioritise what you needed. So even though you had the RV, you still had to pay to be somewhere. But we got pretty frugal in the end, and we were able to do the accommodation bit on the cheap, and eating and all that type of stuff. So again, it's possible. It's just a matter of rejigging everything to make it suit the circumstance.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So it's knowing, being clear in your own mind what you want to achieve. And there was no way I was going home early. So and I wanted to see as much as I could, and we had what we had, and it was going to work.
Yeah, so, brilliant attitude. Brilliant attitude. Now, when it comes to using that money wisely, a lot of people probably won't know that the price of RVs in America compared to Australia, as an example, is horrendously cheaper, even though you're putting in the exchange difference. Am I correct in assuming that?
You are. You are. It's incredible how much more you get for your money in America.
Yeah.
And and I guess that's due to volume. So there are so many more.
Yep.
And there are so much more of everything in America. So there's so many more people. There's so many more RVs. There's so many more. There's just stuff. There's just so much more of everything. And so it was surprising in the end what you could get for your money.
Yeah.
And so the RV budget, that came out of selling our vehicles here. So we sold our vehicles here in Australia, and that money was put aside to buy the RV. And that was separate to all the money we had saved for general living. And so the RV prices in America are you get a lot more bang for your buck in America. Yes.
So what was did you do the process where you did an analysis around whether you would buy an RV or whether you would rent one? Was there a breakover point in terms of number of months that you were doing the trip for where it became more economically sensible to actually purchase an RV rather than rent one?
Absolutely. I went through months of preparation on that, and I tried everything to in communication with RV rental companies to try and make the price cheaper. And so I tried to get RV companies to sponsor us to do it. They weren't interested. And then I tried to get long-term fixed pricing on an RV. So I'm there for 1 year, guys. Can't you just give me one set price? But no, they wouldn't do that either, because in America you have so many different long weekends and different holidays and school holidays. So the price goes up and down. So if you're planning on hiring an RV for, say, 4th of July or Thanksgiving or Halloween or any of the big holiday weekends, it's like $300 a day to hire an RV. Mm-hmm. Spring break, school holidays, stuff like that, Christmas holidays, all those type of things. And then in the off time, when there's no big public holidays or there are no school holidays, you can get it as cheap as $80 a day.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. But you can't get it on a fixed rate over the whole year.
Yeah, right.
So to rent an RV for one whole year I approached probably 6 companies, and the cheapest I could get was $110,000 in rental fees. $110,000, my goodness! The whole trip wouldn't have happened if I had to pay $110,000 in RV rental fees. So after probably 2 months of scratching around and getting rejected, we went down the path of buying one. And with buying an RV, you take on the responsibility of the RV. So the RV is yours, and you have to wear the expenses of the vehicle. So if it breaks down, you're fixing it, and all that type of stuff. So the fuel is the same. If you hired an RV, you still have to put fuel in it. If you buy your own RV, you still have to put fuel in it. So that's kind of negligible. But the biggest thing you have to get your head around is you're paying your own insurances, you're paying your own registration, and you're paying your own maintenance costs. So if you've got a hired RV and you're on the back blocks of North Dakota somewhere and it breaks down on you, well, you're a phone call away from getting a tow somewhere and probably another RV, and you're on your way. But that comes with great cost when you're doing it for such a long period of time. So if you're planning a trip of maybe a month or 6 weeks, well, hiring would make sense. But if you're planning a trip of maybe anything over a month, I reckon. If you're going a month plus, probably 2 months. Probably a month you're higher. But if you're going for 2 months onwards, you should look at the option of buying.
What type of RV did you end up with? Can you tell us the brand without getting me into trouble?
We had a Damon Challenger.
Challenger?
A Challenger, and that's what we named it in the end. It was a challenge at times. So people would ask us, what did you name your RV? And I thought about it for a bit, and it was Challenger. And the thing was 35 foot long, and it was 13 foot high and 11 foot wide. It was like a block of flats.
Right.
And I had this little mark on the dashboard, and I had to have that mark lined up with the line on the road. If it wasn't lined up if I had it all lined up properly, I knew I was in the middle of the lane. Right. Because you only had like half a metre on each side of you. If you're right in the middle of the lane, you had like half a metre on each side. and you're on the wrong side of the road. Well, for me at the time, I was on the wrong side of the road, on the wrong side of the car. But what could go wrong? You know? Anyway, once I got this mark on the dashboard and I had it lined up with the line on the road, we were away.
Yeah.
And my wife didn't want to drive it. You know, she looked at it and she said, "Nah, I can't read the map either, but I'm not driving this thing." So it was left to me. And as with most things, I accept the challenge and then figure out how I'm going to make it work later.
Yeah.
And so it took me probably 6 weeks, I reckon. 6 to 8 weeks of the trip. The first 6 to 8 weeks were nerve-wracking. I used to get out at the end of the day and I used to, like, kiss the ground. After that first period of time and I got used to it, I was away. It was good.
Have you ever owned a boat?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
I've never owned a boat.
Don't do it. No, that's a joke. But no, I was just thinking of the same kind of challenge when it comes to getting a boat and learning to docking that for the first time when you haven't been in something that's the size of a bus before.
No, it was. We had this app that we had on the phone, and it was so useful that it gave bridge heights and it gave one-way streets and stuff like that. Yeah, doing a 3-point turn in a 35-foot long thing is like incredibly difficult in a one-way street. And finding out you're sitting in front of a bridge that is only 11 foot high when you're 13 foot high. And there's nowhere to go, you know, you've got cars banked up behind you and you think to yourself, geez, you know, you just want to put a sticker on the back, "I'm from Australia, have a mercy." But by and large, we negotiated our way around really well. And
did you drive off with any gas pumps attached to the RV at all?
No. That's our favourite movie now. So, that movie we relate to. But, I liked Robin Williams beforehand, but I loved him now after seeing that movie.
Yeah.
It's so topical to somebody who does a road trip like that. But that's another thing, going into service stations to fill up with fuel. You know, you got to, how high is the roof on the thing? You know, you got to go to the outside lane, and which side is your fuel thing on? And there's so much. You have to be in the zone the whole time. You have to be thinking about it. Whereas when you're at home, you're somewhat on autopilot. You know what you're doing, and you don't. There's so many things that you don't have to worry about. That when you're driving an RV in another country, you're tuned in the whole time. It's mentally draining at times.
It's a really great thing that you're sharing, because a lot of people, you know, we talk so much on the show about all sorts of different parts of travel, but we haven't dived too much into this aspect of travel, where when you do something like this, it brings your senses to life, doesn't it? It really makes you conscious, a little bit like I would relate to riding a motorcycle. When you're on a motorcycle, you've got to be aware of everything that's going on around you, and you're really in the now, as I call it, when you're in that presence, right?
It was really, you are. It's very much that way. For the first 6 months, we didn't even have music going while I was driving. You know, when you're at home and you're driving, before you even start to roll, the music goes on.
Yeah.
But when we were in America, it was like silence. You know, the kids would cower up in the back, and they knew the drill, and I would be there deep breathing, and you would go out onto the road, and just things like looking in your mirrors, and trying to judge when you might have to change lanes, and because getting the hang of having so much vehicle behind you, and then sometimes you'd just push in and be done with it.
Right.
You put the indicator on, let it flash for like 5 minutes, and well, if they don't know what you're doing by now, so be it, and you just push your way in. But and
size does matter on the road, doesn't it? Eh?
Does matter, yeah. But there's always someone bigger. You know, there's always someone bigger in the jungle, and in Australia, or where I'm from in Australia, we have big road trains, and they're a big semi-trailer with like 4 trailers sitting behind them, and they're a beast. You know, you just get out the way. You see one coming, and you hold your breath and you get out the way. But in America they don't have them, but the trucks are still pretty big, and you can feel them coming long before they're next to you, and I think it was due to the size of the RV. The RV was sort of getting sucked in to the truck that was coming up behind you, and then the truck would be right beside you. And you know, at the best of times, you've only got half a metre there. If you're in the right spot on the lane, you know you got half a metre, and then you got this big truck sitting there, and then the truck takes off past you, and it's like you get caught in this slipstream, and you're going like this, you know. And
it's something everybody's got to experience once in their lifetime. Let's jump into the trip itself, because I'm sure people want to hear about some of the places you went to. So you started in one of my favourite cities in the world, San Francisco.
Well, no, we started in LA.
Oh, LA, did you? Okay, I read that wrong
then. The whole trip actually started in Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
So we did 3 weeks in Hawaii first on the way over, and then Hawaii we went to Los Angeles.
Yep.
And then from Los Angeles we actually flew to Houston.
Okay.
And that's where we picked up the RV in Houston.
Yep.
So we spent a couple of weeks in Los Angeles after Hawaii, and then we jumped on the plane and we went across the country to Houston in Texas, and that's where we picked up the RV. I still hate Houston to this day. It's nothing against Houston, but it was just the first place that I had to drive this big RV. You know?
Right, okay.
And
you should have fond memories of it then, if it was because you survived the experience. Right?
The memories are fond, but not good fond. We've never been so happy to get out of a place. But I think that was the only place we went to where we were happy to leave. But it's probably not Houston's fault. You know, I'm sure Houston is a really nice place with lots of redeeming features and things to see. It's just that it was our first time behind the wheel in this set of flats that we were driving around, and we didn't know where we were going, and we, except in a westerly direction, and it was a challenge, hey? It was really difficult. But from Houston, we headed west. So we mucked around in Texas for quite a bit. You could get lost in Texas. You could stay in Texas for like a year if you wanted to.
It's a massive state, isn't it? Yeah.
It is really big. And then we kind of did a big figure eight in the end. So America's really unforgiving with its seasons, especially when you're on a road trip. And if you're caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, it can be really uncomfortable. And so you really want to try and follow the seasons as best you can to maximise your time in that area. So you want to be down the south in the winter, and you want to be up in the north in the summer, and then somewhere along the line, if you've got inclination to see the autumn leaves in New England, where you've got to try and fit that in the break in the middle there. So it didn't work out perfectly, but that was probably me. So I probably took too long in places and forgot to keep moving.
Do you consider yourself to be a perfectionist?
I suppose it depends on who you're talking to. But
well, if I was having a quiet chat to your wife, do you think she'd tell me that she thinks you are? Or you try to be?
Yeah, she probably would, amongst other things. She'd probably call me a big pain in the you-know-what. And I have this inquisitive nature. It's
nothing wrong with that.
I hate the what if. You know, what if there's something good to see and I missed it and I was just there? You know, and so I tend to try and research a spot before I get to it, so I know roughly what's there and what I want to see, and then allow a little bit of time for the stuff that I don't know is there, but I find out is there and is cool to look at.
Right.
So an experience. So, and like traveling, we really wanted to get to New England for the autumn, and but at the time we were sitting in San Francisco, in probably July, no, it'd be August, would have been August. We were in San Francisco, and you've got to get across to New York State or Vermont by now, October, and
it's a big push.
We had all this ground to travel, and it was like you were racing the clock the whole way. And we wanted to go to Yosemite. We wanted to do the 5 national parks in Utah. We wanted to do this, that, and the rest. And anyway, we really wanted to go to the highest point in America in Colorado, and it's called Trail Bend, the track that goes up there, and you get to the top and you're at like 13,000 feet. And for someone from Broome, we needed oxygen. We were sitting up there. And anyway, we were sitting up there, and it started to snow. And this is all really idyllic and looks really good. And the kids were like out of their mind, seeing snow for the first time. And
yeah, I bet they were, though. I bet you they were saying, we want to live here, Daddy, were they?
Yeah. But then it dawns on you, your RV's not set up for cold weather.
Right.
You don't have snow chains for the tyres, and you don't have this, and you don't have that, and you go, oh, no, come on, we got to go, you kind of slide down the other side of the hill, and you keep going, and they call it winterizing your RV, where they insulate all the pipes and the fuel tank and the water tanks, and put chains on tyres and all that type of stuff, and winterizing an RV, I didn't even know the term existed until somebody told me about it and said, well, maybe you should consider heading south. I said, I can't head south. I've still got to see this. And the wife was just like, oh, geez, And anyway, so we pushed on, and we managed to go east to west. We managed to go from San Francisco all the way to Arcadia National Park in Maine.
Wow.
And anyway, I ticked that off, and I thought, yes, I did it. And the wife said, I didn't even know it was on the list. But I didn't say anything, just in case you tried to talk me out of it. But, so we went west to east, and then we worked our way around to New York, and we're sitting in New York in November, and it was freezing cold, and it was snowing, and it was cold, and it was exciting. But you realised at that point that you had to go. You had to move. And so we took off after our week in New York, and I really wanted to see Gettysburg, the Civil War battlefield, and it was in Virginia, and it was up high in the mountains, and it was really cold. It was like -2, and nobody wanted to have a look at anything. But my son and I, we went out onto the battlefield, and we're roaming around, and we got back to the RV, and there was ice on the windscreen. Wow. It was like covered in ice, and we thought, holy Moses. So we took off, and we were heading for South Carolina. We thought, if we get to South Carolina, we should be far enough south that we can get out of all the danger weather.
Absolutely.
And I'm driving down this mountain, and the windscreen wipers couldn't get rid of the ice quick enough.
Right.
And ice was forming, and the windscreen wipers were going. I pulled into a Walmart. And anyway, I took stock of things, and I looked on the map where we were, and I looked on the map where we had to go, and I thought, oh, geez, I said, we're going downhill. It should be all right. We're losing all the short work. And it did. And we kept going, and the weather cleared up somewhat, and we spent a bit of time in Washington and different places, and we made it to South Carolina.
Yeah.
And we sat on the beach for 2 weeks.
Right.
And it was all right, yeah.
So let's talk about some of the places specifically, because when you're traveling across the United States, you've got, I guess, 3 real options. You've got large cities, medium-sized cities, and smaller cities that you probably went to, or townships, as we would call them. So give us a little bit of a sample from each of those categories on what were your favourites and why.
Yeah, I wish I had $1 American for every time I was asked this question. It's really because it's so diverse, and picking out one thing that stands out above all else is really hard, and because you find yourself breaking it down into subcategories. And well, the best national parks, you sit there and you think to yourself, well, just one really. And and it's the same for cities. But the big cities we really enjoyed were San Francisco and New York. We had an absolute ball in those two places. We were scared. New York scared the life out of us. The little town that we live in, Broome, there's maybe 10,000 people live here.
Right.
We got off the train at Grand Central Station and we were stunned. We were like kangaroos in the headlights. I reckon 10,000 people got off the train, and we were standing there and we were looking at all these people buzzing around the station, and we went, wow, it's like Broome in the station. So, not out on the street yet. So, New York was really exciting. We really enjoyed New York and San Francisco.
It's like a scene out of Crocodile Dundee I'm listening to, isn't it?
It could be. I was walking down the street and my wife said to me,
Did you pull out the knife? Did you say this is a knife to anybody?
I didn't. But the wife said to me, don't do it. And I said, what? She says, I know you're going to do it. Saying g'day to everyone you pass, Yeah. And you don't know everybody here like you do back home. And so that was pretty funny. And she was right. I probably would have started saying hello to everybody as I passed them. But
So San Francisco, tell us about your time there. You loved the place. Did you get out to Alcatraz? Did you get up to Napa Valley and Sonoma and those places?
We did. We went to Alcatraz. As a sombering place. It's to walk around there, you think to yourself, wow, it's this really existed. This was an operational place, This is where people used to come and serve their penance,
So after you've been there now, do you think they actually escaped and survived? Do you think they made it?
Oh goodness,
It's different when you see it and you're actually there and you think, oh, hang on a minute, this looks a bit dodgy.
It's like it does. It's out there in the bay. It's like sitting out there. It's like a pimple on a pumpkin sitting out there in the bay, and you think to yourself, well, anything's possible. I guess if they could have kept themselves afloat and got themselves on the current and that got them towards land in some way, then maybe they could have escaped. But whether or not they drowned or a fish ate them on the way is another thing altogether. It's a long way to the shore when you're floating on a little inflatable raft.
Yeah.
So and three blokes too. It's not just one person. It's three.
Yeah.
It's I don't know, to be honest. It's doubtful, I think, but I guess the fact that they never found anyone is it leaves that lingering possibility that maybe one of the three did anyway.
One of the great unsolved mysteries of the world. So you were telling us, did you get up to Napa and Sonoma around those places?
We did.
Yeah.
We did almost Highway 1 its entirety.
Mm-hmm.
So and we took in lots of little deviations off Highway 101 and went to the wine regions and we went to all different places, and it's there's so much to see and enjoy on the fringes of those big cities. Like Los Angeles, for argument's sake, I think Los Angeles is like a 1,000 cities without a town. And San Francisco is kind of a little bit better off, but you can leave San Francisco and somewhat be out of suburbia. You can be away from you can be away from the built-up areas. So whereas you're a little bit more trapped in Los Angeles unless you head east and you get into those mountains there. But the valleys around San Francisco were really nice, and the beaches too, for that matter. And a little bit further north from San Francisco, the redwoods. We really enjoyed the redwoods. The trees were extraordinary.
Yeah. So I'm talking to a man that went around Australia 3 times, and then he decided to go across the United States with his family in an RV. How do you cope with going from such isolation when you're doing a tour of Australia to going to these big cities in America? How do you personally feel? Like, are you craving to get out of the city and get back into the countryside, or are you actually embracing it for the first time and really enjoying it?
Both. It was, we went with the attitude of experiencing it for what it was. So we didn't want to miss out on something due to a preconceived feeling or expectation. So yes, we do enjoy going bush at home and getting away where you may not see anybody for weeks. But going to places in New York and Los Angeles and San Francisco and St. Louis, Missouri, and oh goodness, the list goes on. There was San Antonio in Texas, Houston, Texas. All these places offered something, and it's not in my nature just to ignore what they offer, because I didn't feel comfortable with the amount of people that were around me. And I take the attitude that you may not like it, or it may not be your cup of tea, but to go and I don't want to die wandering either.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to get in there and experience everything that each place had.
Yeah.
And places like San Antonio in Texas, where you had the Alamo and you had the...
Oh, it's a great city. San Antonio is a great city. University city, full of energy and life, isn't it?
And the waterways, the canals going through. And then we went to St. Louis, Missouri, and you had the Mississippi and you had the Gateway Arch. And then New Orleans for its energy and river as well. And there were so many little places along the way that were really quaint. They were really nice. And we did 3/4, maybe a bit more of Route 66. And all the little places along Route 66 were really interesting. And the Hollywood and the 7 o'clock news doesn't do America any favours. And what you see on the 7 o'clock news and what you see coming out of Hollywood isn't exactly what you experience when you go to America.
Oh,
It's especially when you start to leave the bigger places and you're driving around and you're stopping at lakes or beaches or waterfalls, national parks, and you're eating in small diners or roadhouses or stuff like that, and you're talking to lots of average or everyday people that you quickly find out aren't any different to you.
Yeah.
And it may have helped that I was Australian and they just liked to hear me speak, but by and large, I think once they got over that, it was really engaging and good. So it it was great for the kids too. Yeah. They got so much out of talking to American kids and Americans in general, and they after probably 4 or 5 months, they were starting to compare where they came from to where they had been to where they were standing. And it was really good. It was really good to see them do that.
Going to test your knowledge out a little bit now, because you did a very vast trip around the United States, as you said, in a figure eight. Do you know what the Great Loop is?
The Great Loop? No, I don't.
Okay, we might have to go back and do that. The
Great
Loop's actually a maritime adventure in the United States. So it's a waterway trip by boat, and you go from Florida in the south up through the intra-coastal waterway to New York City, which is predominantly inland, so you don't have to go out into the ocean except for the last little bit towards New York City. Then you go up the Hudson River into the Erie Canal system, and that takes you into the Great Lakes. And you go across to Chicago and down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico and back to Florida, and that's called the Great Loop. So it's It's the waterways equivalent of the grey nomads in the US with their RVs.
That's incredible. That would be something else.
It's a 6,000-mile water time adventure. So you've got a lot of people doing that, just like you have going across the United States in RVs. You've got people doing that in their boats and spending up to a couple of years, seasonal again, of course, going around the Great Loop on a boat. So maybe that's your next trip. You get over there and do it on a boat next time.
That would be amazing, because we followed the Colorado almost from its origin down to its exit into the Gulf.
Yep.
And we didn't do the whole lot, but we did probably 3/4 of the Mississippi. So we didn't get to its origin in Minnesota, but south of Minnesota all the way down to New Orleans, we pretty much followed it.
Yeah.
And so to hear you talk about, and we saw the Great Lakes,
right,
and we saw the Hudson River,
yep,
and we spent a lot of time in Florida,
yep,
and around there. So I can kind of piece it all together where you are and where you're going. But to do it on water would be something else. Yeah, that would be good.
And it's quite incredible, because as you just said, you've driven past a lot of that. A lot of people don't know that this even exists, that you can actually even do this, and go around the eastern states of the United States by boat, which is quite extraordinary. Let's get back to your trip, though. I'm inquisitive to find out, how did the evolution of the family go during this trip? So how was it, 4 of you inside a RV at 35 feet long, spending a year together in close confines? Did the family grow from that experience?
They did. Yeah, no, they did. The RV itself, we didn't spend overly great amounts of time in it. You had the travel time where you were going between places, but everybody was far enough apart, so everybody could find their space within the vehicle. And when we stopped and we parked it up, we were out doing stuff. So there was not too many times where we struck really bad weather that made us go stir crazy inside it. And even when there was times where there was bad weather, we could generally go and find somewhere else to be, and do something. But everybody's got a better understanding of each other and a better tolerance of each other. So I think we can all read each other a little bit better. So out of that Robin Williams movie, The RV, if you want your family, throw everyone in an RV and go on a really long road trip. And it's true. It is true. You think you know everybody around you, but you spend so little time together. By the time the parents go off to work and the kids go off to school, and then at the end of the day, the kids are off doing their after-school activities, that may be swimming, dancing, football, tennis, whatever, and everybody comes home, and if you're lucky, you have an evening meal together, and then there might be homework or showers for the kids, and then they're off to bed, and then parents are probably watching TV or looking on an iPad, one or the other, and so the actual time where you're engaging with each other is so small on a daily basis in normal life. We didn't watch TV for 12 months. And so it was and looking at an iPad was reserved for 1 hour before bedtime. So the kids were in bed and they might listen to an audio book or something like that. And the rest of the time, you were out doing stuff. And you do get to understand the nuances of the people around you. So I think we were more tolerant of each other, and we actually were friends rather than family members.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. What was the funniest thing that happened on the trip? Can you remember something hilarious that happened to you all?
Well, there was a couple of things. Like my daughter was standing on, she's got really long hair, like she's 8 years old and we've never cut it. And on this particular day, for whatever reason, I got slack and I didn't plait her hair. So her hair was just out in a headband. And it happened to be the day we went on top of the Empire State Building. And her hair went from being down to being vertical above her head. And we just happened to get it in a photo. And it's like this wall of hair. So we've got my son and my wife behind her, and you can barely see them because her hair is vertical above her.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty funny. But there were so many times when it would be something that's triggered it. So you may have seen something. Like there was a funny episode when we went to Yellowstone, and I was in the visitor centre and we planned to go walking. And I had some hikes picked out, and you have to register when you go walking with the ranger. And so I went up to the ranger and I said to the ranger, we are planning to go walking here and here. And he goes, oh, that'd be fantastic. Yep, beaut day for it, all good. And he goes, have you got bear spray? And I said, nah, bear spray, is that the stuff that you've got on sale over yonder there? He goes, yes, that's the stuff. And I said, well, no, I don't. I thought you were just taking the piss. I thought that was like a souvenir or something. And he goes, no, sir, it's for real. It's something you must have.
Right.
And I said, well, okay. He says, I'm not going to register you for your hike until you have the bear spray. So I went and got the bear spray, and I came back and I said to the bloke, can you please explain to me how to use it?
Yeah.
And anyway, he takes it out of the packaging and he says, right, this is what you got to do. When you see a bear, you all stand still. And you have got to, if you're the one holding the bear spray, you've got to be at the front and everyone else has got to be behind you. You wait for the bear to get within 2 feet of you. You pull the pin on the bear spray and you hold it steady at the bear's eyes. Don't run. And I said, right, let's get this straight, sir. I said, I've got this big grizzly bear running towards me. He maybe doesn't quite want to eat me, but he wants to make a mess of me.
Yeah.
I've got to pull the pin like a hand grenade on this bear spray. I've got to hold it still and get him in the eyes.
Yeah.
And then the bear won't get angry. He'll just run away. And anyway, the ranger said, well, I've never quite thought of it like that. And that's maybe putting some Australian humour on it. But yes, that's kind of how it works. And my wife said to me, I ain't standing still. If I see a bear coming, I'm running.
Yeah, yeah.
And anyway, she says, you're holding the bear spray, by the way. And anyway, the ranger said, FYI, don't go up a tree.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, best laid plans have just come undone. I said, why not?
Yeah, they'll rip the tree down.
The bear will chase you up the tree, and the grizzly bear will shake the tree until you fall out. And that was a pretty funny instance we had at Yellowstone.
I would
didn't see a bear, but it wasn't close enough to worry us with the bear spray. But it was, as exciting as it was unnerving.
I would have told the guy when he asked you if you had any bear spray, I would have said, no, but I've got a can of crocodile spray in my pocket. I'll bring that out.
Yes, maybe that would have been useful. But, yeah, I don't know which one I would rather be confronted with, a crocodile lunging out of a river or a bear chasing me. I often thought about it. I said that to lots of Americans, you know. They say, oh, you Australians down there have got just about everything that'll bite and kill you. And I said, listen, you guys have got to chill out a little bit. I mean, let me get this straight. In America, you've got bears, mountain lions, wolves, moose, elk, and crazy squirrels. And you're worried about a few snakes.
Yeah.
And, so that was pretty funny, yeah.
We've got to wrap up in a minute, but before we get to the end, Will, I'm going to have to ask you a couple of pieces of advice. So anybody out there that's been listening to your amazing story today and they want to, I'm sure you've inspired people to go and start getting on the internet, looking at RVs in America and starting to plan their trip. So what's your 3 pieces of advice for people that are planning to do that now?
All right, number 1, don't be daunted by it. As hard as it seems and as hard as it looks, keep clarity. It can all be sorted out. It's all figure-outable. You can all do it. Don't be daunted by the by the enormity of it.
Yeah.
To be dedicated to what you want, so you can save enough money, and even when you're on the trip, again, keep clarity on what you want to achieve, and just tinker everything to make sure you get there.
Yeah.
And the third thing is research. Mm-hmm. Knowledge is power. So the more you know and the more you understand, the better you will be, especially if you're doing things from far away.
Yep, brilliant pieces of advice. Where are you off to next? What's the next big adventure?
Well, we're sort of locked down here in Australia at the moment, so I'm doing lots of local trips around the Kimberley at the moment.
Right.
And overseas-wise, America, I'm going to have to go back. There's 50 states in America, and I've done 42.
Okay.
So if I had have done only 20 or 15, I would have said it's a bridge too far. You know, I'm happy with what I've seen. Let's call it a day. However, I've done 42. There's only 8 to go. It's going to be an itch that annoys me until I get a full set. So we really like the look of Canada and Mexico as well. So I could reel them off. You know, I'd like to go South America too.
Yeah.
But there's no time for all that. But I think the next trip will be the remaining 8 states of America.
Brilliant. Did you go to Montana?
We did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Montana's a beautiful state for all sorts of reasons.
Big skies.
Yeah. Well, listen, Will Parker, it's been fantastic having you on the Humaneity podcast today. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. I'm sure, as I said, you've inspired people to get out there and go in search of the United States of America, because it's a great place to discover. And as you said, you can get away from all the things that may have been putting you off that you see online, and get out there and explore the great country that it is. So thanks for being on the show today.
You're very welcome, Mark. Anytime at all. Thank you.